All right, stick with me. Just two more videos to go to wrap up this, or two more steps to go to wrap up this assignment. And so I know we're covering a lot of ground here, but these are all very much introductory skills until we hit this point. And so what I'm going to actually show you now is how to work with our digital elevation model. And so this is where we start to actually move beyond, kind of the introductory information into, working with something a little bit more advanced. So one of the things that I always talk about is how the need to work cleanly, right? And so one of the things when we're working with the digital elevation model, you should probably go ahead and just turn everything off when you load it. And this looks like a giant mess. And so what you should do is know that that's what it's supposed to do when it comes in, but also come in here and go ahead and modify the color scheme and actually go white to black, go ahead and apply that. And what you're going to get is something that looks a little bit smoother like this. And what's going on in the digital elevation model, you can actually go ahead and use the identify tool to come in here and actually select out our DEM. And I can go in at any point in here, and the pixel value is actually going to give me the elevation. So down here at the bottom of the hill by the Wabash River, we are at 512 feet. Up here at the top of the hill, you're at 709 feet. And so you can see about a 200-foot change in elevation from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. Right? And this may not look like much, but this really is the information that we're working with here in Happy Hollow Park. And again, I can go ahead and turn on that boundary, and I can show you that, again, it's that 200 feet in elevation change from the entry, down here in the park, all the way up there to the top. And so, really the 200 feet is elevation change, or the 180 feet of elevation change is really from down here at the Wabash all the way up there to the top. Well, I guess it is almost 200 feet. Anyway, either way, this is really good information. Unfortunately, DEMs don't do much for us when we're actually trying to show people what it is that we're looking at. So we as designers, one of the things that we commonly need is that we actually need to be able to see contour lines. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could actually take this digital elevation model and turn it into contour lines? Well, the first thing we need to do, other than I just opened up my toolbox, which you should do as well, is that we actually need to come into looking for a specific, there it is. It's underneath Customize, go to Extensions. You actually have to turn on a set of tools. It's called Spatial Analyst Tools. You have to go ahead and click that on. If it's not on already, go ahead and click it on and then hit close. What it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and activate this whole toolbox down here. In the real world or the professional world, you've just spent $1,000 to add on a new license to your GIS account that gives you access to all this information. But there's some really, really interesting things that we get to do down here. One of these being contour. So fortunately, they're not trying to hide it from us. And so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to go ahead and grab our digital elevation model, and that's the input raster. So raster data really is image-based data. And you can see the TIFF file behind it. It's not points, lines, or polygons. This is actually stored as a graphic, like an image grid with specific information behind it. And that's how come I'm able to click on different parts of that picture and have it actually tell me the elevation value behind it. So what I'm going to do here is that I can go ahead and select any of these. Interval or distance between contour lines. Well, we work with 1 foot, so let's do that. And so I'm going to go ahead and set this up here and say, I want contour lines at 1 foot. I can go ahead and tell it where I want this to save. But one thing, this is one of those, it takes some processing power. And so if you fail, right, if GIS fails, it locks up, first things first, don't push a lot of buttons, right? Give it some time. It could take 5 or more minutes for this to actually run successfully. I've cut down the amount of digital elevation model you're working with, but the greater, the larger in size you're trying to do, the more time it takes to run. But with that said, one thing that you may want to do is just go ahead and let it run to the C drive, right? Just let it default to where it wants to save information to. It helps GIS run sometimes. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit pause so we don't sit here and stare at this for 5 minutes together. And you're going to see that once that contour tool is run, that I can go ahead and click on my zoom in tool here and go ahead and zoom in on Happy Hollow Park. And you're going to see that I did in fact add 1 foot contour lines throughout the entire park. And so you can start to zoom in here and you can see all of the contour lines start to form and show you lots and lots and lots of information. Problem with that is that it's just so cluttered, right? It's so hard to work with that one of the things I'd strongly recommend doing is going ahead and backing out for now and just go ahead and create really high quality 10-foot contours. We can come back in and add in this information, but that's where I'd go ahead and start the process. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and for me, I'm going to go ahead and rerun that tool, the contour tool underneath Spatial Analyst, under Spatial Analyst, Surface Tools, Contour Tool, and run it with a 10-foot contouring tool. So now when I zoom back in on the property, what you're going to see is those 10-foot contour intervals do still help you really start to understand where the drainage way is flowing through the park, but they don't overwhelm things. I mean, again, we could turn on the 1-foot contours, and to be honest, we will come back and use those 1-foot contour layers when we zoom in on a smaller portion of the park. But for right now, let's stay with these 10-foot contours. I think they do a really nice job of giving us an indication of how topography, where the hillsides are, where the drainage way is flowing through the park. So, because that's a temporary layer, one of the things, just as a reminder, you always want to go ahead, if you saved it just to the C drive into an unknown location, now that it's successfully run, you can go ahead and back out, and then kick it out to your folder where you want to save it, rename it, save it as a shapefile, and re-import it back into your drawing. I have another copy of it saved, so I'm not going to do that just right now at this step in the process. But basically, now we've arrived at a place where we want to be, which if I go ahead and zoom out, and I go ahead and close, zoom, there we go, bring in the entire space, you can see that I am at 1 inch equals 160 feet, so I'm at half size of what the working scale I want to be. But again, remember that's our cheat workaround for what we're trying to accomplish. Turn my parcels layer back on. So now I have parcels, I have a Happy Hollow boundary layer, I've got all of the buildings in the surrounding area, I have the stream layer, I've got roads, I've got a contour. It's one of the things that I want to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the contour layer real quick, and I'm going to show you. You can see, if I zoom in on any of these streets around, that all that my current road layer is doing, even if I were to go ahead and turn it into a big red line, it's just a center line. So you might be thinking, what use is that? Like, why would I want to put that in there? Well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to just turn it to no color, and poof, it's like it went away. But really what we're aiming for here is we're actually trying to use the label feature on this. So if I right click on that layer and tell it to label features, you're going to see that suddenly some names popped up. They're really difficult to see at this scale. So what I want you to do is go ahead and double click on the layer and go to labels. And we're going to actually increase the size of those street names to something that approaches legible. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and crank them up to 14. I think that's a good way to do it. I'm also going to go ahead and adjust the placement properties. I want them on the line, not above the line, because it makes it look like all the roads are being labeled in the wrong location. And if I move this away, what you're going to see is that all of the major roads surrounding the park now have names with them. And all I have to do now is go ahead and just export that layer out. I can do it just as a TIFF because I don't need to edit that information again. And so that's certainly one way to get all of your road names onto a layer and kicked out into Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video or stop the video here. So that's what we're doing with our contour information. You now have all the pieces you need to put together your base map for Happy Hollow Park. And so in the final video, I'll share some tips and tricks on how to make that export process go a little bit smoother.